Welcome back to the Clown World Report. You're here with your host, Martin Goldberg. Today we're going to be talking about this fantastical post on Reddit, which I believe may be relevant to many of you, depending on what extent that you show fealty or pay homage to the bourgeois liberal order. I saw this a couple of months ago and decided to bookmark it because I figured it would make decent content. So it says, "This is the rest of my life. I've recently graduated and started working full time to cover my ass. I'm enjoying planning out budgets, how much I can spend. This is the first time in my life where I have a stable, predictable, and generous income for my age. But looking at the posts on the financial subs, I am going to be burdened by the rising cost of living for the rest of my life. You can raise your income, get a side gig, but that's not really helpful. It's weird and hard being hit with the realities of life. Yeah, I'm up to the challenge, but honestly just annoyed that I have to count dollars for the next 40 years. What are some life-altering tips you made at 22 that have paid off for you 20, 30 years down the road? Become trans." There you go. But here's some great suggestions. Good hobbies, good friends, and good food. That's kind of the prototypical secular person response. Obviously, you don't believe in anything higher. It's just go out, have some alcohol, talk to people who are just as miserable as you happen to be. And this brings us to the point of the video, which is, to what extent are you buying into liberalism? Because there are certain promises that were made, and we certainly could go back to the 90s, early 2000s. You had a clash of cucks, the end of simping, and most of what we were promised just has not materialized. Let's be perfectly real. You are expected to follow what's basically the Ben Stein approach. You get in the best possible undergraduate schools, you get in the best possible graduate school, make the most amount of money, max out your 401k, send your kids to a private school. It all sounds fine and dandy. From a young age, you pick up on what is acceptable as so far as political ideas are concerned. So you should be preferably center-left, maybe center-right neocon, but nothing else, or you will be considered a problem child, and it'll likely impact your ability to maintain employment or even get it in the first place. But even if you do all of that, liberalism is never pleased. It's never satisfied because it's a paranoid and schizophrenic ideology. And so you can expect that as time goes on, there's going to be more that is foisted upon you. So you get that job, and then you go out to, you're living in an expensive suburb of a city. Your apartment is costly. It's just a sardine can, but that's all right. You go out to happy hour. Maybe you hook up with someone a few times, break up, and a few months later you meet and hook up again. This continues, and by the time you get to be in your 40s, you guys can have an IVF insemination. The stork shows up and delivers a pickled baby, and the cycle continues. Maybe you can take some time to experience wanderlust by going overseas and staying at a resort. But for the most part, that's the rest of your life, and you have to determine, do I believe in this stuff, or there's got to be something more? That's what I wanted to talk about, because again, liberalism does not own up to, or it really does not live up to, its commitments and its declarations of what's going to happen if you just do what we say, as far as what you learn from a young age. No, there's going to be more. It's never going to end. And so it started with the kind of traditional factory working class jobs where you could make a decent wage, have benefits, raise a family, afford at least a basic house. No, we're going to send those overseas, and we're going to bring in cheap labor to replace you. And then, well, you can still get a college degree. You get into debt for your degree, and then they bring in foreigners to replace you and compete with you. So even if you're making decent money, the cost of living is going nowhere in your favor. It's hard to buy a house. It's hard to build a family. On top of that, the liberation movement has not exactly helped men and women stay together and actually prosper from a young age. There's all this, I can play the field indefinitely, and that, of course, disenfranchises particular people who are not perhaps well-oriented towards that lifestyle. So, once more, liberalism is not sincere. And all the center leftists, they did next to nothing to prevent this decline, the outsourcing and all this. No, they were happy to join in because they were profiting. These same people would donate to their campaigns. So it is a massive illusion that we're supposed to believe just the fact that someone's a man of the people, working class Joe Biden. Well, working class Joe Biden's still trying to flood the country with cheap labor. Just so you understand, just like Barack the Booty Obama was doing, it doesn't fundamentally change so much. And even when people attempt to do something about it electorally, which you might argue was Trump, the system comes in and quashes you and tries to destroy that attempt and undermine and constantly sabotage. That's just the name of the game, I suppose. Liberalism, of course, never ceases to push the envelope on you. So, okay, it's the diversity propaganda training. You have to agree with us on certain political issues or certain activism causes, or you'll lose your job. Then we're going to force you to get the injection, or you're not going to be allowed to maintain employment. It's going to jeopardize your ability to provide for your family. So again, liberalism as in aspirations of the individual, you do what you want, just be a good human being, don't disrupt freedom for the entire society, but no, it's not good enough. We are going to enforce this upon you. And we're also going to expect you to be a little propagandist, which you see with these guys on the Reddit, ex-red pill, whatever, neckbeard things. They're always trying to attack the so-called fringe, these skulking parasites in their mother's basements. And you're like, you're attacking people who are calling out flaws in the system in most cases. Some of them are crazy. I absolutely grant you that. But you're just attacking people who are calling into question all the assumptions you have, the belief system you have in this secular illusion, which is liberalism. And that's why you have to, the only meaning you really can find is in trying to defend that system, even though when this guy, he had a moment of clarity or euphoria, whatever you want to call it, and he said, oh wow, maybe this isn't all that it's cut out to be. Maybe I'm actually being taken for a ride. Now, if you don't partake in that, what happens? Well, you get deplatformed, you lose your job, they try to cancel you from financial payment processors so you can't function, even if you are the type of clown going around promoting the free market. I mean, look at what happened to Stan Molyneux, Free Main Radio. I mean, it doesn't matter how much of a shill you are for more capitalism, more private sector. It doesn't matter. They will still come after you. And meanwhile, you've got these so-called conservative types or classical liberals that sit there, Andrew Sullivan or Douglas Murray, this strange death of Europe. What happened? We'd be like, I'm saying that we have these things. We've had civil rights. We've had equality and gay rights. Why do we have to do all the woke stuff? So you don't get it. And I put it in that compulsory liberalism post on the blog, the quote where it was saying that this is not, liberalism was hijacked or liberalism was led astray. This is the natural process of an ideology that does not have any sense of limits, does not have any sense of responsibility. It's ultimately about, it just devolves into power and money and controlling other people's lives. That's why they're not going to protect freedom. They're not going to be like, oh, well, yeah, we are the liberals. We have to stand for individualism. No, they're not going to give up power because they have no reason to. And they're going to become increasingly more obsessed with preserving what they have as the years go on. But that in of itself is not really a good tactic, because as long as you allow people who dissent, okay, they can live their life, they just do their own thing, they're less likely to say, okay, let's toss out the entire model. But when you're so paranoid, when you're so obsessed with, oh my gosh, someone's trying to work against me, and you do that, you make it impossible for a person to get a job, to run a business, to, even have authority over their family and their children. When you completely cancel them, you prosecute this financial and economic terrorism on them. What happens is they have little reason to even care. And if you saw with the people involved in the Capitol protest, many of those individuals had financial issues, they were in debt, they had basically, the American dream had failed them. And so they're saying, yeah, let's just put everything towards this one chance that maybe things are going to transform. It's a reason why I was kind of motivated to make content again, and perhaps we'll go in some other directions, like do streaming on Odyssey. I might have like a different handle there and just do a lot more of the political stuff in that realm, is that a lot of what I was researching, especially the last 2 years, is slowly coming about. So you guys might remember SOR, right? Where if you look in the 1920s and the 1930s, people who were not marching in step with the internationalist order, or whatever you want to call it, they lost their jobs, they were censored, there was violence perpetrated against them, and they started to realize maybe all this liberalism, the bourgeois, yeah, maybe it's not all that it's cracked up to be. Unfortunately, in the right wing of the United States, that's only risen in most cases to, oh, it's crony capitalism. We need true capitalism. Like, I honestly believe that's just a massive, really, illusion unless you want the state to be coercive towards corporations, which is in some sense what these national populists desire, but they're very poor. They do a poor job of articulating it. So what ended up happening is people, back in the day, they had to form their own institutions, and they started realizing maybe we should have state power, and we should nationalize certain things and make sure that they serve the people, as opposed to what's happening under liberalism. They're serving basically the coffers and the bank accounts of international finance and the elites. So it's just really a question, but I want you guys, let me know, to what degree do you believe in the liberal system? Are you like a proud, patriotic, liberal supporter in some sense? I might do a video that has kind of a counterpoint to this in terms of what happens if you're too far outside of the liberal order, or at least the general legitimate economy. Nevertheless, I believe we are seeing some dramatic shifts, and I think it is going to come to a head eventually, and we're going to start viewing politics take on an entirely different form than we saw in the past, which was basically both sides aggressively shilling for corporations, just at different degrees.